This is Influence's first virtual beer and learn. And while we wish that we could actually share our beer in our office with you, Dave has already loaded up on his pint glass there. Unfortunately, we are still virtual for the foreseeable future as we try to be safe and cognizant of COVID implications. So thank you for joining us virtually. We're really excited to share a great topic, I think one that's especially relevant as marketers are looking at the ways that their budgets have been impacted by the pandemic, by the subsequent recession. And so I'm really excited to introduce Dave Anderson, who's our Director of Search. He also owns the analytics practice at Influence, so this is definitely right up his wheelhouse, and I know he's been doing lots of really cool, fancy things with dashboards of late that I'm sure he's excited to share with you today. So here's my virtual cheers to you. Dave, I don't know if you want to do a virtual cheers with us. We hope you enjoyed the session. I'll turn things over to Dave. If you do have questions along the way, feel free to drop them into the chat window. And at the end of the session too, we'll try to have some room left over from any additional questions that you may have. We're also going to be recording today, so look for the recording link after this session as well. All right, Dave, take it away.
All right, thank you, Natalie. I'm really excited to kind of be here talking about analytics. It's one of my favorite topics. Because of that, I have a lot of content here, so hopefully we do have time for questions at the end. I'll try to be quick through some of these pieces that are maybe refreshers for most of us. Technical problems. All right, so kind of setting the stage, one of the new things that's been said out there lately is data is the new oil. It's such a valuable commodity. People are thinking of it as a commodity in the same terms as oil, and in a way that's true. It's not in a literal physical sense that we think of commodities, but it is a hugely important, easily accessible commodity for all businesses. And as marketers, we know firsthand how data can be leveraged to define your strategies. We build buyer profiles and define targeting strategies based on the data we collect, and we create messaging strategies designed to engage and encourage deeper interaction with those target audiences based on that data. And it does stretch well beyond the sphere of marketing. I mean, we see data analytics permeating all areas of life, really, from retail to politics, and evolution of artificial intelligence and machine learning is built on the back of quote unquote big data. So I mean, I think I used most of the buzzwords that I'm supposed to use when I talk about data here. So if you had your bingo card handy, you probably got a good chunk of those set. But the reality is data by itself is not necessarily a commodity. It's the value that comes from analytics and insights that you deliver from brainpower. So to set ourselves up, I'm kind of on the same footing. I'm going to talk a little bit about what I mean by like being a data-driven marketer. I think that's really what the nuts and bolts of this discussion is. And so, of course, being a search guy, spending most of my career in the search field, I went to Google first to find my answer. I love the answer boxes, generally speaking. I think this answer is okay. It gives a fairly good representation, but it's not really complete. Data-driven marketing is a strategy of using customer information for optimal and targeted media buying and creative messaging. So it's really this answer is really focused on the media aspects of kind of data-driven marketing, but it's not comprehensive. So then I kind of just scrolled down the screen. I got to Wikipedia, and their answers are much more wordy and a little bit better. Data-driven marketing is a process by which marketers gain insights and trends based on in-depth analysis informed by numbers. And so that's a better answer. I think it's still very wordy as you read further along in this definition. So my answer, to simplify, is really data-driven marketing is a process that we use data to drive decisions rather than personal opinions and what I call gut marketing. I think we all have our built-in opinions about the best approaches to things, and as businesses we may think we know our customers and what they want, but to become truly data-driven, we have to break that mindset and know that we know what will happen because we've tried it before or because we know what our customers want. And so I know through my process of trying to become more of a data-driven marketer, I've come across this cartoon before in real life, where data is great, but if the people you're talking to don't believe it or don't want to hear it, it doesn't necessarily matter. It's still worth the effort to get there. But if you do come across people making statements like this, you just better be ready to buckle up for a long trip. So today, marketing, even if you have total buy-in from everybody in the organization, it's still tough to be a data-driven marketer. It's sort of like herding cats. If you have full buy-in, there's still so much data available from so many different sources, and every source of data has its own layers of data that can kind of help inform you, or it can also send you in the wrong direction, going down the wrong path. So probably everybody's seen these charts before. Every year, Chief Martech creates this infographic on kind of the marketing technology landscape since 2011. So this year is the 10th year they've been doing this infographic, and it's, as you can see just from this kind of process, it's skyrocketing year over year, and to the point where there's so many different data sources and so much data out there. It's really impossible for anybody to look at everything and see all of the things. The 2020 version was just published in April of this infographic, and we're sitting at well over 8,000 total solutions available in the marketing stack now, which is really impressive and probably continuing to grow at that same exponential rate it's been growing. But with so many options, there's also so much data and so many different variations of how you can get to your strategic decisions. Kind of taking a look at this a little bit differently. That's a over 5,000% growth in over 10 years in terms of available data sources for us as marketers. And that is continuing to rise and will continue for years to come, I'm sure. And as marketers, we're responding to the availability of all of these tools by investing more and more in our marketing stack. Broadly speaking, this is great, but generally what happens is we maybe tap into a small portion of the actual purpose and data of the data available to us because we want to accomplish a specific goal with that piece of marketing technology. So while our appetite and budget for marketing tools that are supposed to make our lives easier continues to increase, so does the data that's available. And we don't have the ability to truly look at every data point to inform our data decisions. And so this is from a recent Salesforce report back in 2019, late 2019. And basically, on average, marketing organizations are using approximately 15 different data technologies or marketing technologies to run their operations. So that leads to, again, lots of data coming through. I think it's, as an agency, I think we use more than 20 just for our own operations. And when I start looking at what we're using for what our clients are using and what our customers are using, it's double that easily. I think that's pretty powerful information and a lot to process. Putting this to an individual level, every day we create 2.5 quintillion bytes of data. And that's just, I don't even know what a quintillion is really. That's too much for my brain to process at this point. But what's really interesting to me is like 90% of that data has been created in the last 2 years alone. That's crazy to me. And I would venture a guess that given the current environment of like the global society, that's probably skyrocketing at this point as we are becoming a more digital centric society, at least for the time being. And according to Google, there are 4.5 billion internet users worldwide. So that means on average, each of us produces over 555 million bytes of data every single day. That's again, crazy. But without a data plan, you end up feeling a lot like Phoebe here. We have so much data available at our fingertips, but not enough time or forethought to know what to look for. We can make some highly educated guesses about the various obvious data points that we want to look at, but do we have enough contextualization to understand why? Do we know what we want to do with that data when it comes down to it? And if we don't know, as marketers who are running these operations, how are we going to explain it to everyone else in our organization that needs to be bought into the process? We have this flood of information coming in, proverbial big data, but you're barely touching the tip of the iceberg in terms of understanding how it's telling you the story and what that story means for your strategy. You see the end results, more or less traffic from search, more or less engagement on social media. We're capturing more leads or more revenue. But there's a lot more potential data there that can help you understand and contextualize why. But we're not really able to get to that point in our current operations perspectives. So how do we look at data? I think I've made my point. That's a lot of data. Now it's a little bit more. Let's talk a little bit more about how data is used currently. I know what you're thinking. Isn't data analytics just analyzing data? Really, the short answer is no. I'll tell you why in the next few slides. So as we talk about creating a data strategy, we need to step back a bit and talk about your analytics maturity model. This is a fairly typical analytics maturity model. There's various variations of this out there, but this is pretty typical. Level 1 is basic automated performance by a single source. So you're looking at your paid search or your social media and kind of in a siloed view, and you're automating some pieces of that reporting in order to maybe look at how things have been going. You're looking at historical information and rather than looking forward and looking at what can we do now to impact the future results rather than looking at the past results. So level 2 is the same. It's a little bit more cross-channel at this point, and you're kind of starting to look at a little bit more sophisticated way to understand how these different channels maybe impact each other and how you can make adjustments in one area to positively or impact another area. Or perhaps you're running, like maybe you're running an integrated marketing campaign that's leveraging paid search, paid social, maybe some programmatic ads, and TV or radio or something along those lines, and you want to build kind of an automated view. You can do a campaign level view at this point, but it's still looking backwards. So most of us are here in these level 1 or level 2 phases. According to a recent Gartner report back in December, more than 87% of organizations are classified as having low business intelligence and analytics maturity. So perhaps isn't analytics just looking at analytics? That is a fairly accurate statement. It isn't necessarily a comment on your organization to be sitting in level 1 or level 2 of the analytics maturity curve. So to contextualize, when I got here to Influence 3 years ago, I would probably classify this as less than level 1 in terms of our analytics maturity. We were spending loads and loads of time in Excel and PowerPoint, just loading up manually data manual pulls into Excel to create our charts and graphs that we wanted to pull into this big fancy 60-page slide deck that we could send over to a client and schedule a meeting to walk through it. And that's great. I mean, it worked at the time, but I think one of the point is this is a process that can be time consuming to get there. Over the 3 years we've been working on this, we have definitely made progress towards level 2, and now maybe we're moving into level 3 in some ways. But I think the biggest kind of takeaway from this also is we spend probably 80 to 90% of our time just gathering data in these stages of the game. We're spending so much time just going and pulling data points and responding to individual ad hoc report requests and things of that nature that we're not taking the time to do the actual analysis and to develop insights for our customers and for ourselves. So we need to move on beyond that. Level 3 starts taking us into more advanced actionable analytics. We're able to create visualizations of cross-channel and cross-campaign reporting that gives us an integrated view of how our marketing efforts are playing out. We are able to start tapping into more advanced attribution models and likely begin to do some level of intelligent forecasting to understand which channels are most impactful at each stage of the customer journey. With a level of forecasting available, we're better equipped to justify marketing budgets, and we're able to more swiftly adjust and optimize our approach. Rather than looking at what happened, we're starting to look at what's happening now, and we're making real-time adjustments to our tactics and strategies. And then there's level 4 for those organizations that are able to reach that level 4. The forecasting model has been close to perfected, and you're able to start getting into more predictive analytics to analyze future scenarios. So you're better able and equipped to develop a plan that's based on very forthcoming data points. Everyone wants to be there, obviously. I think if we're starting at level 1, it's going to be a process to get to a level 4 on the maturity curve. So I think it's there's some just level setting that needs to go with that. In these later phases, you're spending closer to 20 or 30% of your time in data collection, and the rest of the time you're actually going to be developing analysis and insights and providing more value from that perspective. Okay, great. So great story so far, Dave, but how do we do that? How can we become more mature with how we approach our data analytics? So here's a roadmap to actionable analytics that I've kind of developed. But first, here's a kind of a humorous take on it. Tom Fishburne, he's the marketunist on Twitter and various channels. He's one of my favorite follows on Twitter. He does a lot of tongue-in-cheek kind of cartoons and about marketing and various things. And honestly, I think most of us have felt this way at some point in becoming data-driven marketing professionals. We all want to be there, but I definitely think sometimes we get to those frustration points where we're not necessarily fully bought in at the same time. But the truth is, there really is a process to get there, to being data-driven and using actionable analytics to drive your marketing strategy. Again, if you're in phase 1 of the analytics maturity curve, don't expect to just jump to phase 4. There's a process. Unfortunately, we're going to have to do the work, and we're going to have to take the steps to drive your marketing strategy in that direction. What I lay out here is kind of 7 steps, and it could be, some of this could be merged and such, but step 1 is kind of making sure that you are taking the time to define your goals and your KPIs. We still have, on occasion, we have meetings with clients, and we don't necessarily come away with fully well-defined goals or KPIs that we want to use to measure performance results. So making sure you take the time to do that and really think through the processes and think about and include all the people that are involved in the different pieces of your marketing efforts to really understand what is it they're looking at that's driving how they make decisions on what they're going to do next, so that we can really have a good map of information that we need to pull into whatever your reporting may end up looking like. So then step 2 is kind of identifying your data sources and mapping the data pieces to your KPIs. So that's a fairly lengthy process as well. It can include, as I mentioned previously, many data sources. But once you've done that, you can actually step into the 3rd stage, which is centralizing your data. We believe that like creating a data warehouse that's centralized to house all of your data is a very beneficial step for you. And then once you've kind of done all that, you've structured your data, you got it all pulled in, you start with the visualization process. And data visualization is basically the dashboards that you would create to view that information. And then you can jump into the next step actually is kind of validating that your data is accurate. You can do it before or after the visualization part. But from my perspective, it's a whole lot more beneficial to pull the data into a visualization and then kind of start validating the points that you're trying to pull in. That way you can make sure that everything is accurate from both ends of it. And then after that, after you've kind of made sure you've got all the data tied up and it's all validated, then you're ready to open up the accessibility and start holding people accountable to the dashboard that you've created. And then it's time for reviewing and adjusting and customizing your efforts. So I'll try to breeze through this pretty quickly. I think most everybody's probably been inundated with the SMART goals discussion, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. We definitely all know that we need to have a specific goal and avoid general statements. That's going to not help you with actually defining a good KPI to march towards. Measurables, it's obviously there needs to be a number associated to it, or it's going to be really difficult for you to put that into a visualization and to actually give you a marching direction. Achievable, I think the biggest key to this statement is just make sure that you're creating goals that are achievable. A lot of times we have very lofty goals, and that means maybe you don't achieve that goal. If there is a time where you're not achieving many of your goals, that probably means that there's a problem with your planning process and you need to maybe readjust your thought process a little bit. Relevant, just making sure that you're able to actually influence the goal. And time bound is obviously you need to have start and end to when this goal should be achieved. All right, now identifying and mapping your data sources is the next big step. We need to understand what your goals are. So once we understand what your goals are, the next step is understanding where are all those data points coming from. So we've mapped all the metrics that we want to look at on a regular basis, and this is the next step. So again, circling back, there's at least 15 data sources that we're probably looking at for most people, and there's a lot of commonality in terms of what we see across our clients. We do offer similar services to most of our clients, so we offer SEO, paid media, those types of things. So it's going to be fairly consistent for us, but there's also a lot of other areas where we could potentially have data sources that we are not accounting for here. But I wanted to kind of go through an exercise for influence. So I wanted to just look at the data sources that I knew off the top of my head that we are using for influence across for various reasons, and pulling that into our data warehouse. And so we have on here, there's 21 specific, and there's one general that's just other data sources, because I know there's quite a few more that aren't existing. So once you've kind of identified all of this, it's really pulling that data in is the next key step in terms of building out quality data that you can use to create your visualizations and to kind of drive your data strategy moving forward. And there are a few reasons why we recommend a data warehouse and why we've taken the time to develop this process for ourselves for building and maintaining that data warehouse for ourselves and for our clients. First, there's the data cleanliness. Assuming we've gone through the process of making sure the data that we're pulling in is clean and accurate, a data warehouse is going to be consistently clean, and it's going to be as good as the data. It's only as good as the data coming into it. But if you go through the process to make sure that it's clean, it will always be clean. And second is the structure. So you define the structure of that data coming into a data warehouse, so you know exactly which data points you want to pull from each data source. And it's only going to pull that data. It's not going to pull in the extra stuff that maybe you don't want to see, or that will cloud the vision of what's happening. So unlike working in Google Analytics, for example, if you go in and you structurally change the name of a goal that you've set up, or how you're naming click events or something of that nature, that's going to be something where it's moving forward. It will change to that name, but it's not going to be a retroactive adjustment. Whereas if you do that in your data warehouse, you can retroactively adjust it so that your reporting will never get impacted by the by the actual change of a small thing like changing the name of your campaign or something along those lines. Third, there's data consistency. Here I'm talking about it's a consistent data process. Our process gets daily updates, which ensures we're not pulling in excessive volumes of data at a single time. It's also stored perpetually, unless we decide to archive it or delete it. So let's say you have large volumes of Google Analytics data. If you try to add a segment, for example, in Google Analytics, so you want to segment your data into a specific target group, your data is likely going to become sampled, sometimes significantly. So instead of doing that, we can layer in the segment on the data warehouse side or in your visualization tool if you prefer, to ensure consistent and accurate data pulls. So the difference there is you're going to see the actual numbers coming into your reports versus in Google Analytics, you would see some sampled data that is probably not completely accurate. And then the next piece is availability. Many platforms have limited amount of time where you can actually access data. A good example would be like Google Search Console or Bing Webmaster Tools. You can get your data up to like 16 months, I think it is. And by pulling that into your data warehouse, you'll be able to store that and you'll be able to access that longer, so you can get better views in terms of kind of historical representation of how things have been going. And finally, you have the ability to do data in your data warehouse. So you can, whereas if you're just looking at a single channel view, you're going into each of those platforms and you're looking at the data in a silo. Versus when we do it this way, we're able to merge all of your data points into a single view, so you can see overall performance across, across channel or across your entire ecosystem. So this is really valuable when you start getting into your cross-channel and cross-campaign views, or when you want to see which channels are most effective at driving lead volume and quality. You can kind of do that at a higher level. So the next step, once you've got your data warehouse kind of cleared up and you're starting to pull the data in there, is creating some visualizations. And so this is where we're creating the actual views that your dashboards will look like. So right now, with our next version of what we're rolling out for as our analytics service, we have 7 kind of customized templates that we're going to be rolling out. And I'll kind of run through those briefly here, but I'll be very brief to save time. So we have website analytics dashboards, which are a lot of us are probably looking at some of this data across in Google Analytics or something like that, and then but we're able to pull that in and then tie it in with some other data sources in order to give some additional contextualization for it. And these are going to be high-level metrics. I will say everything here is customizable. All of this is easy to kind of manipulate for us, but these are the standard views that we're rolling out with. So we have a traffic summary, which dives a little bit deeper into your kind of channel performance or your campaign performance, or however you want to kind of look at that data point. You can filter all of these using these pieces up here at the top, and it's pretty useful information. Again, engagement digs a little bit deeper, so you can see, actions that people are taking on the website, what pages they're hitting, that kind of thing. And then conversions will show you your goals that are being completed on the website, assuming, of course, that you went through in the process of setting up goals on your site in Google Analytics. That will be data that pulls in. These will be likely they'll change fairly often for you all in your own views, because not everybody uses goals the same way. So that's that. And then we have e-commerce analytics dashboards. These are going to be a little bit similar but unique for e-commerce specifically. We can pull in data points from a more enhanced e-commerce set of data points from Google Analytics and from your paid media channels, so you can kind of see your spend versus your revenue. You calculate ROI and things of that nature. And then there's a deeper dive into your shopping behavior. The caveat with this is if you have not implemented enhanced e-commerce on your website, most of this data is not going to populate. So it is that is a project that you'd have to undertake in order to actually get these views working the way that they're supposed to. But it's really useful for you. You can see, so if you do have enhanced e-commerce, you can see checkout, drop off, where people are dropping off in the process, and potentially give you some ideas for optimizing that experience. And then finally, in the e-commerce view, there's the product view, so you can have a drill down into actual product sales in terms of unique purchases and revenue and things of that nature. So you can see it by day and time. You can drill this down however you'd like. And next we have organic search. These are fairly standard dashboards we've already been sharing with clients, maybe slightly different layouts, but with our SEO clients, we've been sharing these types of data points for quite a while. So, it shouldn't be terribly different. We are pulling in multiple data sources here. Of course, there's Google Analytics, Webmaster Tools, things like that are giving us this kind of blended view of the entire search process. Of course, we can see all the queries and how it's driving traffic. And then we have paid media, of course, and that's, again, this is not a new view necessarily from some of our previous dashboard versions. We're able to see in this particular view, paid media is kind of the overarching across all channels. So if you're running paid social across LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and Pinterest, and then you have Google ads and Bing ads and Yahoo ads, as well as maybe some programmatic or some display ads somewhere else, it's all pulling into the single source, and we can actually show the complete aggregate of all these data points, and then you can filter it down by campaign or channel. So it's a pretty good, powerful view for you to really see at a higher level how things are going across all your paid media efforts. And then we have the drill down opportunities with paid social, so where you can kind of aggregate it, or you can drill down to the individual social channel. And same with search. You can drill down to Google or Bing or whatever and look at all of these data points and get a good view of how search is going individually compared to comparing to each other. So it allows these are also really valuable for our internal teams to be able to look at and provide some insights in terms of how we should be adjusting our efforts in where we're spending our money, or where we're maybe where we stop spending our money. So and the paid search gets pretty granular down to the ad level even. So you can see these general performances, and these are dashboards that are available for other channels as well. And then we have the organic social dashboard, which is, again, this is a aggregated singular view across all social networks. So whatever you're using, most of them have the ability to be plugged into this data warehouse, and if not, there are plenty of options for doing that. But you can see this at an aggregated level, and then there's of course a breakdown view for each different channel that you're trying to connect into this view. All right. So the next step from there is validating your data quality. Is your data is it coming in? Is it clean? Do you have, for example, are you sending test data into your production Google Analytics account, or have you separated that out? If you got test data coming in, which we've definitely seen in the past, then that's going to be skewing your data that's coming in, and so maybe what you are actually looking at isn't a perfect matchup in terms of what you are seeing on the financial back end, or something along those lines. And how we capture all the data points that we need to through our process. Did we actually identify all the different data elements that we need to pull in from an individual source? And if not, we can go back and we can add that into our data structure, so we can maybe reconfigure how the data solution is set up, so we can ensure that the visualizations are showing exactly what we need to see. So I think this is a pretty good cartoon. Basically, if you don't do this step, you're going to see issues with your data perpetually. So you need to make sure that your data is clean, that you have gone through the process of auditing that and making sure that everything is coming in is what it should be. And if you don't, you will at some point start to regret it, and it will be a problem that you'll have to address down the road. Finally, assuming you've made it to this point, you've created consistent, accessible, and accurate data for everyone. The next big step is to ensure that everyone that is a stakeholder is looking at the same data and speaking about it in the same way. This is creating the idea here is you want to make this your single source of truth that everybody is looking at and everybody is in agreement. This is what we're doing for our marketing organization for the next however long it's going to be. It needs to be, that's what it needs to become. It needs to be your single source of truth. And of course, from our perspective, there's always an assumption that the process isn't perfect. You need to be open to reviewing the data and customizing it to better answer the questions that you need to answer. You need to be ready to adjust if there is a switch in your strategy, or if there's a new market or something along entry or something like that that you need to account for. We need to go back through and kind of redefine some of these elements. And of course, we're here to help. Just drop us a note and let us know if there's anything that you need help with. A few things that I'll mention here right now. We can do Google Analytics audits. I think that's a very important piece of, especially in the data quality area. Let us help you with a Google Analytics audit. Brian Roseman, one of my colleagues, actually just recently published this Google Analytics checklist, which we can get to everybody if you want it. It's really useful. So useful that Google Analytics actually retweeted it not too long ago, the other day. So that was pretty exciting for us to see that happen. Kind of gives a little bit of validation to us in terms of what we're doing and how we're looking at this stuff. Another thing is Google Tag Manager. For all clients, I personally recommend implementing Google Tag Manager in most cases. When you start having multiple tags and multiple things to manage, it can be a major convenience for you as a marketing team or for your marketing partners. Implementing GTM, Google Tag Manager, once rather than sending over a snippet of code every so often that you need to deploy. It puts it in your hands, and so you can customize the tagging based on your needs without requiring a developer or a tech team to kind of jump in and fit it in when they can. So this will help it will also help you saving on things like page load time. If you only are needing to fire tags in certain spots, you can do that, and it's super useful. Data measurement planning. This is also something that we'd be happy to come in and help you with. We can kind of map out the entire process. We can walk through this with you and get you to a spot where you're ready to really start talking about your data strategy. And finally, creating your dashboards. We are able to plug in your data into these dashboards. It's a fairly straightforward process for all of this. If you're interested, definitely reach out, let us know. We can also talk to you about creating customized views if you have specific needs that you need to look at that are kind of being hit with these templates that we have now. We can talk through that process and start to understand, and help you to show that into a point where it's something you can use across your organization. And then analysis and insights. This is kind of the last piece, the big piece that that's kind of missing out in terms of where a lot of us are in our maturity at this point. So we can help you with providing that ongoing support for analysis, insights, and customizations, and even some technical adjustments to any of your stuff that you need. So that is me. I am done. I did that very quickly.
Certainly reach out to you or to us if there are questions that come up in the future. And thank you so much for joining. We will send out the recording as soon as it's available. And we appreciate you all tuning in today. Have a great day.